Hi guys, welcome to the top 45 true crimes that took place in Japan. I'll be bringing you this countdown in two separate videos, and this is the first part. If there are any crimes that you would like to know more about, please let me know in the comments below. Of the ones that you guys mention, I'll look into which cases have the most information out there and make a special episode of that case in the future. Again, sit back, relax, and enjoy part 1 of the top 45 true crimes that shook Japan. Number 45. April 23rd, 1994. A janitor found a part of a dismembered body in a bin in Inokashira Park, which straddles Musashino and Mitaka cities in western Tokyo, Japan. The police searched the other bins in the park and found a total of 27 severed limbs, all in bin bags which had holes in them to drain any liquid. They were all cut into approximately 20 centimeters by 30 centimeter pieces and drained of blood. They only found the arms, legs, and right chest. Most, not all, of fingerprints on the hands and toes had been destroyed. Therefore, the police were able to use what was left of the prints and DNA analysis to identify the victim. He was identified as 35-year-old Seiichi Kawamura, an architect who lived close by. The cause of death could not be determined because there were no signs of physical violence or traces of drugs. This case remains unsolved, but one of the strongest theories is that it was a case of mistaken identity. Number 44. From 2008 to 2018. Shiga Prefecture. In August of 2018, a man's torso was found floating in the waterway in Moriyama City. By the late afternoon, the police had discovered the head, both arms, lower body, and left hand on an embankment 350 meters from where the torso was found. The victim was identified as 69-year-old Sunao Nakagawa. From August 10th to the 16th, his ATM card was used on 3 separate occasions by Tomoyoshi Yuzuhira, which is a very unusual name in Japan. He was arrested in September for fraud. In October, he was charged with mutilating and dumping a corpse, and in December for murder. When his house got searched, they discovered human bones varying from a few millimeters to a couple of centimeters in the drainage pipes. These bones did not belong to the recently found Sunao Nakagawa, but to another body that was found deceased back in 2008. The creepy fact here is, Tomoyoshi Yuzuriha owned a yakiniku restaurant or a type of Japanese barbecue house. It was not a popular place due to the consumers complaining about the meat served there, saying, "I don't know what kind of meat it was, but it tasted horrible." It makes one wonder if maybe they were being served human flesh. Number 43. March 28th, 1961. Nabari City, Mie Prefecture. 17 women were poisoned, 5 of which died when someone poisoned their wine with pesticide during a party. There were also 12 men present, but they were all drinking sake, so this mass murder was only targeted towards women. A 35-year-old man, Masaru Okunishi, was quickly arrested due to the fact that of the 5 that died, one was his wife and the other his lover. In 1972, he was handed the death sentence. He tried to appeal it 9 times, but it was denied each time. In 2012, he got pneumonia, had to get hooked up to a ventilator, and became bedridden. In 2014, he was the oldest person on death row and passed away a year later due to his illness. Number 42. May 23rd, 1979. Nagaoka-kyo City, Kyoto Prefecture. Two housewives went into the mountains to pick some bracken, an edible type of fern. One of the women, who was 43 years old, was stabbed over 30 times and the murderer's semen was found on her. The other woman, 32 years old, was stabbed over 50 times. 5 years after this horrific double homicide, another 48-year-old housewife was found murdered in the same city with multiple stab wounds. This woman happened to be friends with the other two housewives and was supposed to go to the mountains with them that day. No credible evidence or information could be discovered, and on May 24, 1994, the statute of limitation was reached. This case remains unsolved. Number 41. November 17, 2004. A girl in her first year of elementary school was kidnapped and later killed. Kaoru Kobayashi was arrested. He already had priors for lewd behavior towards young girls and had been imprisoned for it. Why a man like this was ever allowed to go back on the streets is incomprehensible. However, the Japanese system is what it is. He goes on to kidnap the little girl with the intent to sexually abuse her and kills her in his apartment. He uses the girl's phone to send a text to her mother saying, "I have your kid," and attaches her picture to it. After killing her, he dumps her body far away and proceeds to send another message to the mother, this time threatening to come for the younger sister. Massive amounts of child pornography and undergarments that looked to be stolen were found in his home. He was sentenced to death. Number 40. January 26, 1979. Akiyoshi Umekawa went into the Kitabatake branch of Mitsubishi Bank and took the customers and bank employees, a total of 40 people, hostage. He shot and killed 2 employees and 2 policemen, made one woman strip down naked and used her as a human shield. He forced hostages to do unspeakable acts such as cutting off the ears of one of the employees that he killed. 42 hours later, on January 28th, the police finally raided the bank. Akiyoshi Umekawa was shot in the head, neck, and chest and died at the scene. This barbaric case shook the whole of Japan and was later made into a movie. Number 39. June 24, 2009. Dismembered body parts were found belonging to 2 different men by a man fishing in the Yokohama harbor. One was identified as 28-year-old Daisuke Mizumoto, who operated a mahjong parlor, and the other 36-year-old Junichi Takakura, an employee there. The group that committed the crime used to own the mahjong parlor, but after it was taken over by the other 2, problems between the groups ensued, leading to this crime. The 2 men were both called out to a hotel where Hiroyuki Ikeda stabbed the 36-year-old in the neck to death. The 28-year-old, however, did not have an easy end. Ikeda was ordered by Takeru Kondo to cut off his head while still alive with an electric saw. The boss, Takeru Kondo, had not been captured yet and is believed to have fled to Thailand. There is an international warrant out for his arrest. Not only is he wanted for this murder, he is also wanted for importing methamphetamine from Vietnam with intent to distribute within Japan. 8 men have been arrested for this crime, but only Ikeda, who committed the actual murder, got sentenced to death. Number 38. 1979. From 1979, 4 young girls were abducted and murdered, a 5th girl abducted and is yet to be found. They all happened within the 20-kilometer radius between Tochigi and Gunma prefectures. The similarities between the cases are as follows. All girls were between 4 to 8 years of age. 3 cases involved pachinko parlors where the girls went missing, 3 of the girls were found on riverbanks, and 4 cases occurred on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and on a public holiday. All 5 cases remain unsolved, and, not counting the kidnapping case, the 4 first cases have unfortunately reached its statute of limitation. Authorities still do not know whether they are all connected or not. Number 37. April 18th, 2008. 23-year-old Rurika Tojo disappeared from her apartment without a trace. Security cameras within the building captured her coming home but never leaving. It was later discovered that a neighbor living 2 doors down from her, 33-year-old Takanori Hoshijima, had kidnapped her, killed, and dismembered her. He broke into her apartment hoping to make her his sex slave, and when she fought back, he knocked her out and took her back to his room. Once there, he killed and dismembered her, taking 2 weeks to slowly get rid of her body parts by flushing it down the toilet or taking it out with the trash. The psychotic part about this case is that he was interviewed many times on TV and even tried to help the police. He received a life sentence. Number 36. From April 30th to November 24th, 1985. A series of indiscriminate poisonings occurred throughout Japan during this time. Paraquat, a strong herbicide, had been mixed into drinks, leading to the deaths of 13 individuals. The statute of limitations was reached in 2005, and this case remains unsolved. In September of 1999, the production of this herbicide was banned in Japan, and it has also been banned in various countries around the world. It has been linked to the development of Parkinson's disease. Number 35. April 14th, 1999. Yamaguchi Prefecture, Hikari City. A young mother, 23, and her daughter of 11 months were killed in their apartment by an 18-year-old male. Wanting to lose his virginity even if it entailed raping someone, he pretended to be an inspection worker for the water drainage system and went around ringing the doorbells in his apartment complex. He was hoping to come across a young housewife at home by herself. He wasn't sure if he could pull it off, but as he came into contact with several people who didn't bat an eye, his confidence rose. Around 2:20 in the afternoon, he came across the victim's house. She let him in, and he pretended to check the pipes while gauging the situation. Wanting to rape her, he hugged her from behind, but she screamed and fought back, at which point he straddled her and proceeded to strangle her to death. It was after this that he raped her. Around 3 p.m., the victim's daughter began crying, and afraid that someone might hear, he tied a rope around the baby's neck and strangled her to death. After hiding both bodies within the apartment to avoid detection for as long as possible, he stole the cash in her wallet and other valuables and fled the scene. He was sentenced to death. Number 34. December 30th, 2000. A father, 44 years old, his wife, 41 years old, their daughter, 8, and son, 6, were all found murdered in their home in Setagaya, Tokyo. The case remains unsolved even though fingerprints and blood believed to be the perpetrators was found at the scene. Not only the parents, but the kids were stabbed multiple times, and further evidence suggested that the person remained in the house for some time, using the laptop and eating ice cream. Number 33. August 24th to 25th, 2007. 3 men randomly met on the dark web and decided to rob someone together. Late at night on August 24th, 2007, in Nagoya City, Aichi Prefecture, They abducted a young woman aged 31 who was returning home from work. Upon stealing her ATM card and other valuables, they wrapped her head several times with duct tape. Using a hammer, they bashed her head multiple times, eventually killing her. They dumped her body in the mountains in Mizuna City, Gifu Prefecture. They were unable to take any cash out from the ATM because the woman had told them a fake PIN number. Although they were planning to commit further crimes, one of the men turned himself in and the case was able to be solved. In 2009, 2 of them were sentenced to death, and the third, the one who turned himself in, received a life sentence. Number 32. July 5th, 1995. Sachiko Eto, a 47-year-old woman, self-proclaimed guru and a cult leader, killed 6 members and injured a 7th at her own home in Sukagawa City, Fukushima Prefecture. They used the sticks of a taiko, otherwise known as Japanese drums, to beat the devils out of their followers. After the 6th victim, a woman, was hospitalized for her injuries, the police went to search Eto's house. There they found 6 rotting corpses and Eto was arrested along with her 3 other followers. The woman who was hospitalized was also arrested when it was discovered that she had also partaken in the assault of the 6 other followers who later died. All were imprisoned, but Sachiko Eto was the only one who received a death sentence. On September 17, 2012, she was executed in Miyagi prison. She was the first woman to be executed in 15 years. Number 31, 1993. A husband and wife duo, aged 53 and 37 at the time respectively, were arrested and sentenced to death for the murder of 4 of their customers. The pair owned a pet shop called African Kennel and were certified breeders of Alaskan Malamutes. They had racked up a huge amount of debt, and in order to lessen that burden, they sold their dogs at exorbitant prices, promising their customers that if the dogs ever had pups, they would buy the pups from them at high prices. However, when they brought the pups in, the owners would come up with all sorts of excuses and pay much less than what was promised to them initially. This is an example of the type of business they conducted, and they soon began to have trouble with their customers. From a vet they knew, they got their hands on strychnine, a substance used to put down dogs, and killed 4 of their patrons. They used their employees' house to dismember the bodies and burn everything down to ashes in a steel drum. They threw away the remains in the mountains and rivers along Gunma Prefecture, and thus this multiple homicide case is well known for one that has no bodies. Number 30, September 14th and 16th, 2015. A man from Peru, Jonathan Byron Nakada Ludenya, who was being held at the Gunma police station in Saitama Prefecture, escaped and over 2 days went on a rampage, killing 6 people, of which 2 were elementary school girls. This man had witnessed his older brother, Pedro Pablo Nakada Ludenya, killing 25 people in Peru. Once in Japan, the man began to exhibit psychological problems, telling people that he was being chased and that he would get killed. Although he was initially sentenced to death, it was later changed to life imprisonment. Number 29, December 4th, 1999. The leader had been a troublemaker since he was young. Him and 2 others stole money from the victim, and when he didn't have any more to give, they forced him to borrow money from his other friends and acquaintances. All were males, and all were 19 years old. The 3 kept the victim in a hotel for 2 months, forcing him to shower in boiling water, lighting fire to insect spray while spraying him, and other unspeakable acts of violence and torture. They took him to the hospital once with these horrific injuries. However, they never left him alone with the doctor, thereby not allowing him to show the worst of his injuries. Even with burns all over his body, the men proceeded to pour 90-degree water on his wounds and continued showering him with boiling water. Regardless of the victim's parents going to the police on 9 separate occasions, they were never taken seriously. Once the men heard of this, they decided to kill the victim. In comes a 16-year-old male who played a hand at killing the victim by strangulation. After burying the victim's body, they poured concrete over it. Although they were all saying they just needed to get away for the next 15 years until the statute of limitation is reached, the 16-year-old turned himself in 2 days later on December 4th. He was sent to a juvenile detention center, while one of the 19-year-olds got 5 to 10 years and the other 2 19-year-olds got life in prison. Number 28. March 16th and May 27th, 1997. A 14-year-old boy named Shinichiro Azuma killed Ayaka Yamashita and Jun Hase, aged 10, in Kobe, Japan. This murder not only shook Japan but the entire world. Jun Hase was a student at a special education school. His head had been sawn off with a handsaw and mutilated before being left at the gates of the school for students to see when they were coming in the morning. There was a letter in his mouth taunting the police. The boy was arrested on June 28th, where he confessed to killing Ayaka Yamashita and to 3 other attacks on girls around March 16th. Because he was only 14, his name was initially withheld from the public and he was sent to a juvenile detention center until his release in 2004. This case caused a huge uproar and in the year 2000 triggered a change in Japanese criminal law where the minimum age to be tried as an adult was decreased from 16 to 14. Number 27. September 16th and 18th, 2004. Omuta City, Fukuoka Prefecture. A family of 4, a mother, father, and their 2 sons, who were part of the Yakuza, killed a family of 3 and their friend who just happened to come over that day. They put their bodies in a car and sank it into the Suwa River. The Yakuza family were in financial trouble and killed the family they were borrowing money from. 3 of the 4 killed were all young. 2 of them were 15 and the third a 17-year-old. The entire family was sentenced to death for the crime, making it completely unprecedented. Number 26. From 1968 to 1974. Chiba, Saitama, and Tokyo serial murders. Victims were all females, most of them in their 20s, and were raped before being killed. 9 of the victims were burned, and 2 were buried, and blood left at the scene told authorities the man had type O blood. In September of 1974, a man named Etsuo Ono was arrested but soon released for lack of evidence, and he was hailed as a hero. However, a few years later, in 1996, he was arrested for a separate case and sentenced to life in prison. This case in itself was extremely gruesome, where on January 9th, a headless woman's body was found burned, wrapped in a futon, and dumped in a parking lot in Adachi. Her genitals had also been mutilated. The woman, who was 41 years old, was living with Ono at the time of her death. He was well known amongst the police circle as a hero, a man that was found innocent and let go of the serial murders from a few years ago. They were therefore cautious when it came time to analyze the evidence. The police went undercover as homeless men and obtained DNA from his saliva. On April 26th, a 5-year-old girl was assaulted and strangled, but luckily she escaped. The DNA from this case and from the woman matched that of Ono's, and he was arrested. On May 2nd, the police found the head of the woman buried in his garden and her genitals in the fridge. It was at this time that Ono finally confessed. Although many believe he was the serial murderer, he continues to deny it to this day. Number 25. March 5th, 1992. A troubled 19-year-old abducted a random 15-year-old girl for the purpose of her. Although that was the initial aim, he was also in need of money because the Yakuza were after him, and he decided to steal whatever he could from the girl's family. Having obtained her address from when he took her to his apartment the first time, he went to her family's place. He ended up killing everyone except for the 15-year-old girl. The mother, father, grandmother, and younger sister, who was only 4 at the time. The 15-year-old was raped multiple times during this ordeal and attacked with a knife that she had to be hospitalized after he was arrested. He was sentenced to death. Number 24. August 2nd, 2004. Kakogawa City, Hyogo Prefecture. A 47-year-old unemployed man went to the 2 houses next to him and attacked 2 families with a knife and hammer. Of the 8 attacked, 7 were killed and the 8th was heavily injured. After the attack, he burned the houses down. He was sentenced to death. Number 23, 1988 to 1999. Tokyo and Saitama. This case, a series of murders involving 4 young girls aged 4 to 7, is very well known across the globe. The murderer's name was Tsutomu Miyazaki. He taunted the police and the families of the girls by sending letters to them. He also went as far as to send the remains of one of the girls to her family. On July 23, 1989, he was arrested when a father caught him with his youngest daughter in the car taking pictures of her. Once arrested, he admitted to killing one of the girls and dismembering her. Upon searching his home, the police found a total of 5,763 homemade movies. 74 detectives and 50 VHS machines were used to analyze every single one of them. It took 2 weeks, and in it, they found a tape that seemed to show the girl after she had been killed. During questioning, he also admitted to cannibalism. He was executed on June 17, 2008. Number 22. October 11, 1951. Chiba Prefecture. Genzo Kurita, a serial murderer and necrophiliac, lured a mother and her 3 kids to the top of a cliff. There, he pushes the 2 older kids off the cliff and proceeds to rape the mother, who has her youngest strapped to her back. After he finishes, he throws the mother and her child off the cliff too. The woman gets caught whilst mid-fall, and Kurita goes to her and ends her life by bashing her face with a rock. Unbeknownst to him, the elder's daughter survived the fall when she got caught midway down the cliff. She hid in the shadows and survived the attack. This was not the first atrocity he committed. In 1948, he was engaged to 2 women who were friends with each other. When one pushed him to get engaged, he strangled her to death shortly after, and when the other one told him to hand himself in to the police, he strangled her too and raped her afterwards. In 1951, he happened to see a mother taking a nap with her baby through the window. He suddenly got the urge to rape her and did so while strangling her to death and then engaging in necrophilia again. A year later, in 1952, he snuck into an apartment and killed a 63-year-old mother by stabbing her in the stomach, then raping and killing her 24-year-old daughter. When he committed this last crime, he already had a warrant out for his arrest on burglary charges and was arrested at his brother-in-law's house where he was hiding. At that point, the police found a bloody knife that tied him to the crime and subsequently charged him with all the other murders. He got 2 death penalties, which is extremely rare, and was the only person to get a punishment of this magnitude until a separate crime occurred in 1994, where Kiyotaka Katsuta, another serial murderer, got arrested and charged for 8 murders. He actually admitted to 22 murders in total, but the police could only get enough evidence to charge him with 8. In addition to these murders, he had committed 300 separate crimes of rapes and burglaries over a 10-year span. Number 21. June 27, 1994. A terrorist attack occurred in the Tokyo subway. This attack is known around the world as the Tokyo subway sarin attack, where a cult group called Om Shindikyo used sarin. Sarin is an extremely toxic synthetic chemical compound that is used as a chemical weapon due to its extreme potency as a nerve agent. It is colorless and odorless, making it very dangerous. 7 people were killed in this attack, an 8th victim 14 years later due to its side effects, and multiple people injured. The first person that notified the authorities was wrongfully portrayed in the media as part of the Om Shindikyo cult and was harassed by the police. Authorities couldn't figure out how the victims died, whether it was an accident, a crime, or a natural disaster. As such, the media first released the news saying 7 people had mysteriously died. It wasn't until Om Shindikyo released a document to the police and other affiliated groups taking responsibility for the terrorist attack and admitted to what chemical they had used that the details of this case became known. Shoko Asahara, real name Shizuo Matsumoto, was the leader of this cult group. He was responsible for the deaths of 27 people across 13 separate crimes, and him and 12 others from the cult were sentenced to death.